Here at this podium ends up being routine. The conversation in the aftermath of it, we've become numb to this.
Well, he's a great divider, and you have a big issue between the Second Amendment folks and the non-Second Amendment folks, and he is a non-Second Amendment person.
You think he was being a divider?
I think he was. I think he was actually being a divider because, George, no matter how you cut it, you have people that are mentally ill and they have problems and they're going to slip through the cracks, and no matter how you do it, no matter how you try it, and if you go back 2,000 years and if you go forward 2 million years, you're going to have problems, and it may not even be politically correct to say.
Every country has mentally ill people. Not every country has mass shootings as frequently as we do.
But what's interesting is the places, you look at Chicago, it's got the toughest gun laws in the United States. You look at other places where they have gun laws that are very tough. They do, generally speaking, worse than anybody else. I mean, if you look at some of these places, Chicago is a good example, but go to Baltimore, go to various cities where they have very, very tough gun laws. They do terribly.
So what would you do about it? You sound pretty passive.
No, I'm not passive at all. I can tell you that people say, oh, we're going to stop it. It doesn't work that way. This has taken place, whether it's this type of crime or other crimes, taken place forever, from the beginning. And you go out 1 million years from now, you're going to have problems. And even if you have a very tough system, you're going to have people that slip through the cracks. And it's a very sad situation, and you have to, great vigilance. I mean, you have to show great vigilance and watch and be careful and security and everything else. But no matter what you do, you will have problems, and that's the way the world goes.
That's your answer? We're going to have problems?
Yes, you're going to, it's in it. Now, George, I could say, oh, we're going to do this and that, and it's never going to happen again. You have sick people in this country and throughout the world, and you're always going to have difficulty. That's why you have newscasts.
But you're Mr. Fix-It. You're Mr. Can-Do.
I know that, and I think I'll do a fabulous job, and I will make things a lot better. No matter what you do, you're going to have difficulties. People are going to slip through the cracks.
So no new laws, no new gun laws?
Well, the gun laws have nothing to do with this. This isn't guns. This is about really mental illness, and I feel very strongly about it. And again, politically correct, oh, we're going to solve the problem, there'll be no problem, et cetera, et cetera. You're always going to have difficulties, no matter how tight you run it. Even if you had great education having to do with mental illness, you educate the community, it's still, you're going to have people that slip through the cracks. And these people are more than slipping through the cracks. These people want to slip through the cracks. So you're going to have problems. It's unfortunate.
Let's talk about your tax plan.
Yes.
Everyone gets a tax cut.
Right.
More and more Americans will pay nothing at all. But the Conservative Tax Foundation says it will increase the deficit by about $10 trillion over 10 years.
What do they know, George? What do they know? I mean, they've been doing this stuff for years. Can I tell you what? They've been doing this stuff for years. They're so off. You look at their past projections. They are so far off. People, this is a very dynamic
plan. So not going to increase the deficit?
People are going, well, if it works the way I want it to work, it's not, because we're going to bring back jobs. I am going to bring back so many jobs. One of the things that we're coming out with in the next 3 or 4 weeks is cutting. And the cutting is a big part of my plan.
So you're going to come up with cuts that will close that hole?
We're going to come up with very substantial cuts. And Department of Education, we're going to do cutting. And the economy is going to grow exponentially.
You also said that this tax plan is going to cost you a fortune.
It'll cost me a lot of money.
How do you get there?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have carried interest like a lot of other people do. And carried interest is a wonderful thing, but it's unfair, and rich people are getting...
That's $20 billion over 10 years for everyone who has it.
It's psychologically so important. If the economy grows, we all make it up. And frankly, the job producers make it up. The economy has to grow.
Let's dig into this.
And by the way, we have to bring back jobs, also part of my plan.
According to your financial disclosure, you made what, about $250 million in the last year?
605 million.
Okay, 605. The top rate goes from 40% to about 25%.
Right.
Capital gains comes down from 23 to 20.
Right.
That's a huge, that's tens of millions of savings.
Everybody's going to save, according to my plan. And that money, you know where that money's going?
You're not going to be
George,
paying more taxes.
That money's going back into other things.
But you're going to get a tax cut.
I don't know, because I have very big deductions that are, frankly, some of them are ridiculous. You're entitled to deductions. So I don't know that I am. I think that probably I'll end up paying more under this. To be honest, I don't think I'm going to. If you look at all of the kinds of deductions that people are allowed to take that you're not going to be taking anymore, including carried interest, that's just one of them, I think I probably don't do as well.
But where your family would make potentially hundreds of millions of dollars eliminating the estate tax.
Well, the estate tax is a different thing. The estate tax is a very, very horrible weapon that has destroyed many families, in particular farms and things where they make an income and they have a certain value and they have to go out and borrow money and then they put mortgages on their farms. And
it's 20 farms in the last year.
Big businesses. George, if you have a business and let's say it's a business that's not very liquid and people have to go out and borrow against the business, you are having travesty. And the other thing is, it's a double taxation. The tax has already been paid. I mean, you've been hearing this argument for many years.
Your family would benefit, but you're saying it's just wrong.
No, I say it's a double taxation. The death tax is an unfair tax because the tax has already been paid.
Bottom line, you do accept that you are going to make out well under your tax plan.
I don't know. I mean, if the economy is good, if the economy is great, everybody makes out well.
Getting any closer to releasing your tax returns?
Well, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about maybe when we find out the true story on Hillary's emails. You know, I've been saying that for a while. Let's find out the true story.
But
you know what? And I'm very honest on my tax returns.
What is your tax rate?
I'm not going to say it, but at some point I'll release it. But I pay as little as possible. I'm very proud to tell you. And I will say this. If this country were properly run, where the money wasn't in shambles, where the deals that they make aren't the Iran deal, where we're giving Iran $150 billion and the deal is a disaster in every single possible way, where everything we do is bad, including Obamacare, which is, by the way, the premiums are up 55% for some people. If our country was properly run, I'd almost feel much better about it, and so would a lot of other people.
Let's talk about
but I just want to say, I fight like hell to pay as little as possible. I used to watch Romney, who, by the way, really let us down because he failed to win an election that he should have won easily. But I used to watch him try and get his number as high as possible. It's not the way it works. I mean, I fight because that's a very big expense. And one of the problems and one of the reasons I fight so hard is because I hate the way our country is spending my money and everybody else's money.
Let's talk about foreign policy. We've seen Russia go heavy into Syria this week, at least 2 days of airstrikes. Yesterday, Hillary Clinton, today, John Kasich, both say we should establish a no-fly zone in Syria. Would you do that?
I don't think so. I think what I want to do is I want to sit back, and this does not sound like me very much, but I want to sit back and I want to see what happens. You know, Russia got bogged down when it was the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. They thought that would be quick and easy, and they'll go in, they'll clean it up.
You think he's falling into a trap?
Well, I think it's not going to be great for them, if you want to know the truth. But let's just look. They got bogged down. It destroyed the Soviet Union. I mean, they essentially went bankrupt. It destroyed the Soviet Union. Afghanistan. Now they're going into Syria. There are so many traps. There's so many problems. When I heard they were going in to fight ISIS, I said, great.
But they're not bombing ISIS.
Well, not yet. But they don't want ISIS going into Russia either. So they're not bombing them yet. And the other thing I look at is Assad. Assad's a bad guy, but they're all bad guys. We're supporting rebels. You know, they talk about the Syria Free Rebels. We're supporting rebels. We don't even know who they are.
Better the devil you know?
Well, I spoke to a general who's very, much on. He said, Mr. Trump, we have no idea who these people are. They may be worse than Assad. So we're going to spend all of this effort, all of this, we probably have to go against Iran now. I mean, and we're making Iran rich and powerful. You notice Iran now is coming in with the ground troops. They have $150 billion. All of a sudden, they're rich. The sanctions are gone. Everything's gone. What we've done with Iran is one of the most incompetent things I've ever seen. So now we have this, and we're going to fight for people that we don't even know who they are. Now, if you look at Libya, you look at Gaddafi, you look at what's gone there, you look at Iraq with Saddam Hussein. I mean, do you think we're better off now? Because I personally don't.
We still do have this huge refugee situation. And a few weeks back, you said we'd have to take some in on humanitarian grounds. But just this week, you seemed to reverse it. You said you're putting people on notice. I want to quote you here. If I win, they're going back. So
well, ABC was at my speech the other night in New Hampshire. Totally packed house, 4,000 people. It was a beautiful thing to see. And I gave a very, detailed explanation. And I'm going to give it to you right now. When I heard that, I saw the migration. And the migration was strange to me because it seems like so many men. There aren't that many women. There aren't that many children. It looked like mostly men, and they look like strong men. These look like physically strong people. And I'm saying, where are all the women? Where are all the children? Okay, and a lot of
Half
people,
the
by the way,
refugees are
excuse me,
children.
a lot of people have said the same thing. But when I heard we were going to take in 3,000, which was the first number, as you know, then I heard we were going to take in 10,000, I sort of said, well, okay. Now I hear we want to take in 200,000. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know who they are. They could be ISIS. It could be the great Trojan horse. I mean, this could be one of the great Trojan horses ever since the original. We don't know where these people, they have no documentation. They have no paperwork. There's no way they can prove where they're coming from. And I'm saying we're going to take in 200,000 people that we have no idea where they come from. And I said, I would absolutely not do it. I have a bigger heart than you do, okay? Believe me, I have a very big heart. And I understand the whole thing with migration. It's a horrible thing. Should have never happened in the first place. We screwed up. This country screwed up the Middle East so badly with breaking up Iraq. We have so destabilized the Middle East. It is a mess. So I said, there's no way they come in. If they do come in, if I win for president, they're going out. And I tell them up front, if I win, now, I may not win, I may not even get the nomination, even though even you will admit I'm leading big league in every poll, but I may not. I mean, a lot of things happen. If I win, they're going back. We are not going to take responsibility. Now, are they ISIS? Probably not, but nobody knows.
Even
and many of them, look, they shouldn't take them in. Europe should take some problems. You have the Gulf states. You have Saudi Arabia, you have Bahrain, you have Qatar, you have some of the richest countries. They're not taking any, and they're right there. So we're supposed to take 200,000 people that we have no idea who they are?
Just two final questions. Your wife, Melania. A lot of the country saw her for the first time this week, People magazine.
Yes.
Talk about what kind of a first lady she would be. We've seen a lot of different models. Michelle Obama, Laura Bush, Hillary Clinton, all had their own styles. Where does she fit?
So Melania is a very beautiful woman, both inside and out. She has got a tremendous heart. She feels so strongly about the women's health issues. In fact, she knows how strongly I feel about that, and she's always pushing me on women's health issues. When Jeb Bush said he's not going to fund women's health issues, that was a terrible, she couldn't believe it. And she told me about it when I got home. He then said he misspoke and he made a mistake and he's going to. But she couldn't believe it. She would be so great on that. And so would Ivanka Trump. She feels the same way. And they both want me, they said, Dad, you have such respect for women. And they say, you cherish women. You have such respect for women. You got to speak more about it, because there's nobody that cares more for women than you. My mother was one of the great people ever in my life that I've ever met. And I have just amazing admiration and respect for women. I think Melania would be unbelievable for women and for the country.
Finally, you talked about the polls, a lot of good polls. You're still in the lead. Ratings breaking records every time you go on television. And this led Dan Henninger, a Wall Street Journal columnist yesterday, who says you're a master of timing, cited Atlantic City, and says this is as good as it gets for you. Quote, Mr. Trump should retire to a skybox and enjoy what he has wrought.
Well, I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I guess it's more fun when you see the kind of polls that I'm getting, and I think they're now higher than ever. And a lot of that is dissent. I mean, people are very, very unhappy with what's happened with politicians, how badly they're running the country. They're all talk, no action. I've dealt with them all my life, believe me. You know that because you've covered me in my previous life. You've covered me for a long time. But I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and I think we're having a very big impact. And one thing I'll say, a lot of people are watching that would not be watching. When you look at the debates, when you look at CNN with 23 or 24 million people, they may have had a couple of million or 4 million, maybe. You look at Fox with 24 plus million people. So I think I'm doing a great service.
But you've also said you're not a masochist. So if the polls do start to turn around, do you get out before you get?
It's not a question of polls. If I felt that I was doing badly, if I felt that the polls were, and I think polls are reflective. I mean, right now I love polls because I'm winning everything. I'm even winning. We just got one from Florida. I'm killing the governor and the senator from Florida. I mean, it's been amazing. Texas winning everything, winning every state, winning every national poll, and big league. If that changed and that went in a different direction, and if I thought that I wasn't going to win, like there are numerous people running right now, they're not going to win, okay? I would certainly want to get out. I'm not a masochist. I'm not somebody that needs to do this for other reasons. If I thought I was doing poorly, I would think I would want to do that. Now, I will say, right now, I'm loving it. I'm having a lot of fun. And you know, the most important thing, it's not a question of like, it's a question, I want to make America great again. We can make it great again, George, and I think we can actually make it better than ever before. I've never said that, but I think we can make it better than ever before. And that's what I'm most excited about. Not polls, I'm excited about the end game. The end game is making this country great again.
All right, thanks to Donald Trump. Much more ahead on This Week. Well,
Trump to get his take on the situation. Mr. Trump, can you hear me?
I can, Chris. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Welcome back to New Day. In light of the latest information of Russia bombing and Russia putting troops on the ground and moving them, according to U.S. sources, in support of Assad, do you still feel that you are in a position to wait and see what Russia's intentions are on the ground?
Well, now they're supposedly hitting ISIS, which is a positive thing. And, you know, my attitude is we're backing rebels. We have no idea who they are. As you know, we did it in Iraq, and we did it in other places, in many other places. And frankly, every time we just get bogged down in the Middle East, and Russia will be bogged down in the Middle East. And the Middle East is a disaster, it seems, for anybody that touches it. But I would certainly like to see what's going on. I'd like to find out who these people are that we want to give billions of dollars to. We have no idea. And sure, Assad is a bad guy, but you can have worse, and maybe these people are worse. We have no idea. I spoke to a general the other day who is very well versed in the area. He said, we have no idea who these people are we're backing. So we just look, we have no leadership. We have bad leadership in Washington. We have no idea what we're doing, frankly.
But is wait and see good leadership here? Because you would effectively be subcontracting out the war against ISIS to Russia. Is that a situation?
Saving tens of billions of dollars and letting them go after ISIS. Because, you know, they want ISIS also. They want to knock out ISIS because they don't want them coming into Russia. They have a bigger stake in a sense than we do, other than if we take 200,000 people that we have no idea who they are, which is the next move I hear we're going to make with our brilliant leaders, our brilliant
politicians. But does that sound right, do you think, to American people, that let's trust Russia to take care of ISIS for us?
We're not trusting Russia. This has nothing to do with trusting Russia. Russia has to knock out ISIS because Putin and everybody in Russia, they don't want them, the leaders in Russia, which is basically one, but does not want ISIS coming into Russia. They don't want them crossing borders. They don't want them coming into Russia.
The concern,
so they're going to knock out ISIS whether we want them to or not.
The concern is that they're backing up Assad.
We're not leading anyway. We don't lead in any event. We don't lead. We spent $2 trillion in Iraq and lost thousands of lives and wounded warriors and everything else. We spent $2 trillion there. We've spent $1 trillion, and now it's going up rapidly in Afghanistan. We just knocked out a hospital with a gang that couldn't shoot straight. We don't know what we're doing. And frankly, you're not hurting yourself by watching and waiting and not necessarily backing people, Chris, that we have no idea. You don't know who they are. If I asked you who are the people that we're fighting for and that we're backing in Syria, we don't know.
Well,
you don't know. You can't
actually,
tell me. You probably don't even know a name.
That's actually not 100% true. You are right. It is complex. Which groups of rebels? John McCain had been wrestling with that very early on, who he took pictures with, who he didn't take pictures with. But here's the thing. They have spent time trying to refine the program. They are trying to get rebel groups to do what you're saying, which is fight their own battle for them so the United States doesn't have to do everything, certainly in a place like Syria. But the concern for your position would be you're giving Russia time to organize on the ground, potentially in support of an Assad regime that the U.S. wants to get rid of. That doesn't sound like time well spent, does it?
Well, if you didn't have, if the Assad, regime was in place right now, you wouldn't have the migration of millions of people and all of the problems that that's causing, and death all over the place. And look, there's nobody that's more into the military and nobody more militaristic than me, but you have to know when to use it. I was the one, and I said it very strongly, and you know this, and it was reported by everybody because, unfortunately, I get a disproportionate amount of publicity. But in 2004, I said, don't go into Iraq, and earlier, 2003, don't go into Iraq. You're going to totally destabilize the Middle East. And by the way, when the terrorists that knocked down the World Trade Center put their families on airplanes, none of them went back to Iraq. They went to a particular other location, which I won't even mention, okay? But they did not go back to Iraq. So, you had some signals right there. But I said, don't knock out Iraq because you're going to destabilize. Iraq held Iran in check. Now Iraq is a mess, and it's going to be, by the way, taken over by Iran very shortly. And I said that was going to happen. And you know who else has Iraq? ISIS has Iraq. ISIS came out of Iraq, came out of the rubble of Iraq, and disenfranchised, and they're tough. So we've got nothing but problems. Every move we make is the wrong move. And I was the one that said, stay out of Iraq. And if we stayed out of Iraq, if you just look at some of the things, if we wouldn't have done certain things, you'd have not a great place. I don't want to live there. You wouldn't want to live there. But you'd have a Middle East that would be a lot better off than it is today.
Maybe not. But you got to move forward, not backwards.
I think maybe. I don't think it's maybe not. There's no doubt. If Saddam Hussein were around, if we didn't, destroy that, knock the hell out of them so that they no longer, they're nothing. They used to hold Iran in check. They'd have wars forever.
Right.
They'd go back and forth, 10 feet left, 10 feet right.
There is a history.
Back and forth, nothing would happen.
But you don't know what would have happened, is what I'm saying.
I'm just saying, sit back, just take it easy, just relax. Save you billions of dollars. Let's build some bridges. Let's fix some roadways in our country. Let's rebuild America, make America great again. Let's rebuild our military, where, by the way, every time we give weapons and Humvees and everything to our so-called allies over there, one bullet gets shot up in the air. We give all of this equipment, and ISIS ends up picking it up, and others that are fighting.
And obviously what you have to do in leadership is balance your priorities. I understand your position on Syria, that you're taking a wait-and-see approach there with the Russians. What about in Afghanistan? President Obama just said, not because of what just happened in Kunduz with the hospital you referred to, but that the instability of the situation vis-a-vis the Taliban and other terrorist entities there, he believes that a force should stay there and fight. Do you believe that American boots should stay on the ground in Afghanistan to stabilize the situation?
I wouldn't totally disagree with it, except, at some point, are they going to be there for the next 200 years? At some point, what's going on? It's going to be a long time. We made a terrible mistake getting involved there in the first place. We had real brilliant thinkers that didn't know what the hell they were doing. And it's a mess. It's a mess. And at this point, you probably have to, because that thing will collapse about 2 seconds after they leave. Just as I said that Iraq was going to collapse after we leave.
So you're saying you have to leave troops?
We shouldn't have gone into Iraq, and then we shouldn't have taken our remaining soldiers out, okay? But, look, eventually it was going to collapse. We're in the middle of civil wars. We're in the middle of tribal strife. There's so many different things going on there. We have no idea. So we're backing these people in Syria. We don't know who they are. We have no idea. We're going to give them billions of dollars to fight Assad, and they might very well, Chris, be worse than Assad. We don't know that. They might very well be worse than Assad.
So I hear you on that point. And on Afghanistan, you're saying that you're with the president. For now, you leave the troops there and you see what the time horizon is.
I would leave the troops there begrudgingly. I'm not happy about it, I will tell you, but I would leave the troops there begrudgingly, yes.
And moving into the domestic situation, the Oregon shooting, you know the cries that come out every time there's a school shooting. People say, we want to make it stop. Your answer has been thus far, you can't make it stop. There are always going to be some of these no matter what you do. You think that's the best answer you can give?
Well, look, the fact is that this is a mental health problem. In this country, we've closed for economic reasons, as you know. I mean, you see it in New York and you see it in many other places where they closed institutions, mental institutions, for economic reasons, and it's happening all over the United States that the economy is doing badly, and cities are trying to save money, and the first thing they close are mental institutions, if you can believe it. And we have a problem of mental health, and this is not, the gun didn't shoot, a person shot the gun. And frankly, you're going to have people, even if you had great mental health facilities, nobody knew he had when his mother heard about it and when other people in the area heard about it, some of them said, I could see that with him, but others were very surprised. So it's a very tough situation. And when you go down to a real life, may not be politically correct, but people will slip through the cracks. And it's happened for thousands of years. And if you go into the future, thousands of years, you're going to have crazy things happen, and people slip through the cracks. And it's one of those things. It's horrible, and it's a horrible thing to see.
Well,
one of the things that you really should focus on is keeping the names down, because I really believe the reason we have more of it than other countries, and we do, is the copycat.
Well, that's the easiest part to control, is how much attention you give the shooters.
Well,
that's
you try
certainly
and
something.
give as little attention as possible. I mean, the sheriff was right not mentioning his name, and you try and give as little attention as possible. But it is a real problem, and it's a major mental health problem that we have, and other places have. You know, it's interesting, in Chicago and various other places where they have the toughest gun laws anywhere in the world, they have shootings at a level that nobody has even been able to fathom.
Well,
high.
The statistics, I want to make 2 points. I want to ask you about 2 things. One, on what you just said, it really doesn't work that way. It's not as simple as if you have tough gun laws, you have more gun crime. The opposite is more likely to occur than that. Chicago, as you know, is a very complicated area. You're talking about poverty. You're talking about areas that are neglected. You're talking about areas that are under-policed. So that's one thing. When you're talking about these mass shootings and you point to mental health, you say they fall through the cracks. The goal, therefore, is to fill in the cracks. You don't want to just institutionalize everyone who's mentally ill.
I mean, I agree 100%
They're
with
less
that.
likely to be violent than be violent.
But as good
How
as
do you
you
fill in the
them
cracks?
No matter how well you fill them in, at some point, some wacky, crazy guy with a high IQ but who's totally nuts is going to, get through that crack. I mean, it's going to happen, and it's happened in different forms. I mean, not just this kind of things, but crazy things have happened from the beginning. And you go thousands of years into the future, no matter how good things will happen.
Right, but don't you think we can get better?
Really, can I tell you what? You can absolutely make it better, and you can fill in the cracks.
How?
But every once in a while, somebody will get through.
But what do? Do you start interviewing people before they get a gun? The way other places do? Do you talk to them? Do you call their family? Do you see if they're stable? Would you put that type of onus on the process of getting a weapon?
Well, we have right now in 1998 a lot of legislation was passed. And we have good legislation, but unfortunately it's not really working because a lot of people are not utilizing it, including the federal government. I mean, the federal government's done a hell of a bad job of policing it, but we do have existing legislation which should be very effective, and it's not. You know that. I mean,
why is it not?
They report all the time. It hasn't been effective because the government is not doing a good job in policing it.
Well, you also have some of those loophole problems, right? You have background checks, but you don't have them on person-to-person sales in every place. States have to do it for themselves like they did in New York. You have the gun show loophole that Hillary Clinton is coming out against that tries to blunt that in some online sales. These are things that are being fought back against. Are you in favor of closing these loopholes?
Chris, the one thing I say that I think is very important, though, is I'm a very big Second Amendment person. And if you had somebody in that room or a couple of people in that room who were on the side of good, not evil, and they had guns, you would have stopped that kind of damage that took place. And the cops did a great job. The police did a fantastic job because they got there so quickly. Amazing. But you still had lives lost and people really badly hurt. But the police did a fantastic job. But if people would have been in that room and if they would have had a gun, you would have had a tremendous, if they knew how to use it, you would have had a whole different outcome.
It's a big if. It's a big if when you look at the statistics. Well, but it is a big if because you don't know what happens.
Somebody was in that room that knew how to use a gun, was trained. And by the way, most of the gun holders that do it legally, most of the gun holders really know how to use them. But if somebody were in that room that had, experience with a gun, they would have been able to fight back. They would have shot him maybe before he before he hurt and killed so many people.
Maybe they would have shot somebody else. When you look at the research on this, having a weapon when confronted by someone with a weapon can go either way. But the point becomes...
he's in the room...
I understand the hypothetical.
That had absolutely no weapon. I mean, they're just sitting there with their hands up. He had them lined up, stand up, and then he shoots them.
I understand. It's a terrible situation.
Especially if they said they were Christians. I mean, he would shoot them in the head. And these people are just standing there, just waiting to be slaughtered.
You would rather have a chance to fight back.
If they had a gun in the room, if somebody had a gun in the room, at least they would have had a fighting chance.
You would rather have a chance to fight back. There's no question. So that leads to the next question. Are you in favor of more guns? Get rid of gun-free schools? Have gun-full schools? Have armed security in schools? Is that what you think the answer is?
Well, this was a gun-free school. I mean, this was a gun-free area, they call it. And frankly, that wasn't working so well, and that hasn't worked. How about military bases? How about the the 5 soldiers that were killed, and they were actually heroes. They were actually experts at, a couple of them were expert marksmen, highly decorated soldiers.
So do you change those rules?
Area. They had a gun-free zone in a base. They were at a base, a military base.
So do you change those rules?
And shot these 5 incredible, actually it turns out to be 6 probably, but these 5 or 6 really great, highly decorated soldiers. They were sitting there and they couldn't do a damn thing about it.
So do you change those rules?
For a military base to have a gun-free zone, and we've had a couple of instances where that took place, Chris, it's ridiculous. If they would have had a gun, this guy wouldn't have had a chance, especially with these guys. He wouldn't have had a chance. Instead, they're all dead.
So I'm going to take that to mean that you would allow military installations to people have carry as opposed to having to...
Absolutely. A military installation.
And that you're open to the idea...
Look, these people would be alive. They probably wouldn't have gotten any of them.
I understand.
They
would have been
your
alive.
Point. They're sitting there. They had no chance. And these are highly decorated military people. These were not just regular people. These were highly decorated, very talented and skilled with weapons.
I understand your point on that. The schools
people
are a little bit more of a complicated situation, but there too you're saying that guns may have made a difference. That's something that you would think about in terms of allowing access. That's going to be a big part of the debate.
When the 2 prisoners escaped in New York that your brother knew very well about and that was not an easy task for him when they got out. A number of people up in upstate New York, I was seeing one instance where a husband and wife, he was a very big Second Amendment person, wanted guns. She was totally against it. When those prisoners got out, and it took them, and I think law enforcement did a great job in getting them, frankly, but when they were free for a while, and all of a sudden she became now the biggest advocate because they were sitting in their house in that same very close little area. They were sitting there, and they had the protection of having the guns.
And
all of a sudden she became a big proponent of the Second Amendment.
Of course,
because they needed protection.
Of course, the fear drives that desire to have it. A lot of gun owners respond the same way. I've been in a situation like that. I know what it's like to be afraid that you don't think you have something to defend yourself when somebody else may. The question is, what policies do you put in place? Do they feed that fear, or do they feed a different interest? Let me ask you something. Do you believe that Second Amendment, as you call a Second Amendment interest, feeds into allowing to have assault weapons?
Well, the problem is once you stop, and another problem is the bad guys are going to have them, Chris. You can say, okay, we're not going to have them. You know who's not going to have the assault weapons? The people, the law-abiding people won't have them, but the bad guys won't even look at it. It's like the whole thing with the magazines. You can't put more than 7 bullets in a magazine. Now you can't put more than 2 bullets in a magazine. The law-abiding people will listen and they'll do what they have to do.
So you're open to the assault weapons too?
The bad guys, you think they're going to say, oh, gee, the law says I'm going to only put 7 bullets in a magazine.
Well, just because people are going to break a law doesn't mean that you don't have a law, but you're saying that you're okay with assault weapons as well.
Well, you have to be because the bad guys are going to have them anyway, and the answer is yes. And, a lot of that stuff is used for recreational purposes. They use for recreational purposes. But you're not going to have problems with people that are law-abiding people. But what happens when the bad guys have the assault weapons and you don't, and there's confrontation?
That's certainly what feeds the desire to have more guns in society. You've got your finger right on that.
Let me ask you about those things, but you have to believe in the Second Amendment. There's no choice.
You can believe in it.
Remember the school. If somebody in that room had a gun, you would not have had, if they, knew how to use it, which I assume the answer to that would be yes.
That is not as easy an answer as you make it sound like, by the way.
The people we're talking about do know how to use them. Right. But if somebody were in that room, or if somebody was on that military base, in that room, in the military base, that had a gun, you would not have had the catastrophic results that you had.
That could be true. It could not be true. But certainly you could be in favor of the Second Amendment and also be in favor of reasonable regulations, and most gun owners are. But let's move on to domestic politics here. You are at the top of all the polls. There is a contraction. Carly Fiorina, Carson, depending on the poll, people are catching you. It's actually making people start to speculate about when you'll get out of the race, which I find very unusual. Usually a front runner isn't discussed in terms of when they'll get out. But have you given consideration? I read somewhere that you said if I fell behind badly, I'd get out. Are you thinking about when you would get out of this race?
Not even a thought. Not even 1% of a thought. Look, it's a phony deal that was perpetrated on the public. I was asked a simple question by Chuck Todd at Meet the Press, And I gave a very honorable and honest answer. I said, sure, if I was doing terribly, like some of these people, I wouldn't stay in. I mean, who would stay in? But I'm not. I'm leading every single poll. One poll came out yesterday, 30, or the other day. I'm at 35% nationally. 35%. I'm 20 points ahead of everybody else. Why would I get out? So they asked me a question, and instead of saying like these politicians, I watch these guys that are down at 0 and 1%, and they ask the same question: Would you think about getting? Oh, I'll never get out. I'll never get out. And you know they're going to be out in the next 2 weeks, okay? But they say that because that's
I understand where your take is on them, but because there's contraction.
No, I'm not getting out. I'm not going anywhere, Chris. I'm leading every poll. I'm leading every state. I'm not going anywhere, okay? I mean, I'll answer it a little bit differently. I gave a very honest answer. I said, look, if for some reason I had no chance and I collapsed, and they take that and say, oh, maybe there's a little weakness in Trump in terms of the answer. There's no weakness. I'm not going anywhere. I'm leading every poll, and I'm gonna win, and I'm gonna make our country great again. That's what I'm not in this to have self-glorification. I've had plenty of that. I don't need that. I'm in it to make our country great again. And right now I'm leading. I'm winning. I'm winning by big numbers.
Right, but there is contraction.
By really big numbers.
There is contraction.
I'm not getting out.
There is contraction, though. I'm not talking about you getting out. That was one question. The next question
depends on what poll you look at. If you look at some of the polls that came out 2-3 days ago, I mean, the NBC poll I was at 29. The OAN poll, I was at 35. That came out 2 days ago.
But there
is 35.
Right, but there is contraction. Your numbers are coming down a little bit.
14
Others are moving up.
It was a 20-point lead.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's contraction in your mind, Chris, because everybody says, in the meantime, I'm
there's
still
contraction.
by 5, 6
there's contraction
in
math.
State.
It's math. It's not my mind. 29 to 24. That's math. That's not my mind.
Why aren't you quoting the polls where there's a 20-point lead?
I'm just showing the New Hampshire and the Iowa one. My question is that you hear people saying that you should get out or you have to change.
I don't hear that, Chris. I don't hear that.
Well,
he asked a question.
Well, you do hear Romney's guy went on and said, I think he's going to get out before Iowa.
Question, would you ever get out? I said, yeah, if I thought I wasn't going to win, I'm not a masochist. I told him that. I'm not a masochist if I thought I was going to win. And they end up saying, oh, Trump, look, he might. It's so disgusting. I'll tell you what, the media is so dishonest. It's so disgusting.
Well, I'm trying to ask you honest questions. Let me ask you about this.
I'm giving you an answer. Okay, let me make it a little bit different. I'm not getting out. I'm going to win, okay? I gave a very honest answer, but the press takes an answer like that, and they make it like, oh, there's a big story. They make headlines out of it. It's ridiculous.
All right, I asked you about it. Let's move on.
Out? The answer is, I'm going all the way, and we're going to win, okay? It's a simpler answer, and people can't play around with that. I mean, I watch these politicians. You know they're getting out in the next 2 weeks, and they say, oh, I'm never getting out. They're not telling the truth.
All right. I take your answer on that. You're not getting out. Good to know.
I am not getting out.
You send Marco Rubio this gag gift with the water and all that. You make your jokes. Interestingly, guys out of his camp are saying this in response. I want your reaction to it. They're saying, yeah, he can send us all the water he wants. Who was tired in that debate? 37 minutes. Donald Trump wasn't just outplayed in terms of substance. He was tired. He's 69. He's old. He's not in shape for this. That's the response coming out of the camp. What do you make of that?
They didn't ask me any questions. Every poll, by the way, speaking of polls, Drudge, Time Magazine, Slate, every single poll had me winning that debate. Every single poll that was done, other than some pundits and nobody said I lost it, but every poll. Now, when you talk about the 39 minutes, I didn't say anything. You know why I didn't say anything? Because they didn't ask me any questions. Because the first 2 hours, all they did was ask me questions, and they felt stupid. CNN felt stupid and probably guilty. And I agreed with them because every question was about me.
Well, people were weighing in. Well, people were weighing in. It seems like you could have weighed in. You just didn't.
They didn't ask me. Now, how can I speak? How can I speak? Okay, and how can I answer questions when they don't ask me any questions?
You have no problem speaking when not asked a question.
That's not right. I was asked many questions, and then in the last 38 minutes, they didn't ask me any questions. So a lightweight like this Rubio, who's a total lightweight, by the way, believe me, he's weak on immigration. He's got such problems. He's coming up in the polls.
A lot of people he has promised. He looks at you. He says, you're old. You're the old generation.
He's a lightweight. He's weak on immigration. Take a look at his past. He's got $12 in the bank. He borrows. He works with his car dealer in Florida. Give me a break. Rubio is not the guy that's going to be negotiating with the kind of people you have to negotiate with to turn this country around. But just so you understand, very simple, and he was the one that attacked me first. I didn't attack him. He attacked me. Let me just tell you. He always says, oh, but in the last 28 minutes, he usually uses 28. Now I see he says 38. They didn't ask me any questions. I would have been glad to answer those questions.
All right, Mr. Trump, it's good to have you here answering questions. I'm actually in the unique position of telling you you have to go. You have other things to do this morning, so this interview must end. Donald J. Trump, thank you very much for joining us on New Day.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right. Allison.
What do they think a Trump administration would actually look like? Eric Trump is the son of Donald Trump and Executive Vice President of Development and Acquisitions for the Trump Organization. He joins me now on the Kirby Couch. A pleasure to have you here.
It's great being here.
Talk about a busy few months for your family.
It's been amazing. It's been amazing. What a roller coaster, but he is doing absolutely amazing.
Let me ask you about this, because at top of our news today was that your dad, Donald Trump, and Ben Carson may not participate in the next Republican debate because the terms that they agreed to were not what they're hearing now, that they might sit it out. What's the latest from your dad? Is he going to take that all the way?
Well, listen, I think they won it. At least the last time I saw on Twitter a couple minutes ago, it seems like they actually moved it to a 2-hour debate. And listen, as a guy who goes to all the debates, you sit there for 3 hours. It's a little bit too much.
But why did he really feel as though they would do this at this point?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it was a commercialization of, something that was meant for the good of this country, meaning, trying to monetize a debate for somebody's own self-interest. And, I think that probably rubbed him the wrong way. But, 3 hours is a long time. You want the viewers to be in tune. You want the viewers to be, energetic. It just gets long. It gets long-winded.
It took us long, and it wasn't part of the original negotiation. He is not going to be had when it comes to negotiations.
So I think you won that, right?
It seems as though he and Dr. Ben Carson are in tune with one another, particularly on this issue. But along the way, some have questioned whether this could be what the Trump administration could look like. Who, in your eyes, would make a great vice president should your father get the nomination?
Well, it's too early to tell. Obviously, it's too early to tell, nor would that be the place for me to say. But, the one thing about my father, and I see this every day in our business, he picks incredible people. I think he would have the greatest cabinet in the history of cabinets. He would get people from the private sector. He'd get the best of every respective industry.
Do you like Ben Carson?
Yeah, Ben seems like a great guy. He seems like a great guy.
Could you see them go in the distance?
Listen, it's way too early to tell. And again, it's not, but he picks unbelievable people. I mean, his whole cabinet would be the best. They'd be the brightest. They would be the doers. They'd be the practical people. He picks amazing people, and they really run very hard for him.
Let me ask who's not working hard for him right now, and discuss something that I know is quite personal to you, and that's your father's security. Right now, he has not received the Secret Service, their protection, and he has received threats. There's reportedly a $100 million bounty on your father's head from El Chapo. This is nothing to be taken lightly. How concerned are you for the safety and well-being and your dad's life?
Listen, you love your father, right? I mean, my father's my best friend. He's my idol. He's my boss. We work side to side. We spend every weekend together, right? He's really my best friend in the world. So obviously, when you're in the limelight, when you're in this rat race of the, kind of presidential election, I mean, it's a very tough thing, and you certainly do worry about him. At the same time, he's kind of put his life aside to do something that he believes in, and that's make America great again. He wants to run. He wants to win. I think he will win, and, it's a very selfless act, and I've said that kind of time and time again.
But why haven't they given him the protection that I'm hearing from you that he deserves?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question for them. Every time I go to one of these, events with him, there's 30,000 people, there's 40,000 people, there's mobs of people, and the energy is incredible, but it really only takes one, right? It really only takes one. So I wish they would, and maybe that's a selfish thing. Maybe that's a son speaking on behalf of a person, he loves. I really wish they would, but, I think in time it will come, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
We hope so as well. What lessons? Your dad has had to teach you so much. I read that you sit by his desk doing Legos, constructing those as he would construct deals. But personally, for your personal life, what's the most important lesson he's taught you so far?
I'd say hard work. He's a man who just doesn't take vacations, right? He's always on the go. He's the Energizer bunny, as I call him. I mean, he's always moving, and he always made us work. At 12, 13 years old, we were doing demo on our construction sites. We were running wire. We were laying tile. We were laying marble. I mean, he always had us doing something. There was no free time, and I think almost the worst thing you can give a type A kid is free time, right? That's how they get in trouble, and we weren't those kids that got in trouble. We weren't out there drinking and doing drugs, and so many of our peers were, and he really kept us, grounded and on a great trajectory and path.
On a personal side, one critique that he has faced is that he doesn't say he's sorry. He doesn't apologize. Does he apologize at home?
He's an amazingly warm guy. You might not see it on TV, but he's an amazing warm guy. He's a funny guy. He's an incredibly loyal guy. I mean, he'll give his shirt off his back for somebody that he cares about, that he loves. And sure, he's brash and he's tough, but that's what makes him amazing. That's what makes him, quite frankly, the candidate that this country needs. So I couldn't be more proud of the man.
He obviously has a sense of humor. The Trump costume, by the way, is trending as a top Halloween garb for kids and adults alike. How will he respond to that?
Well, I think the robot is going to trend now, but it's actually funny. I was looking at the Trump costume a couple days ago, right? It came through on Google or whatever it was, and so many women are doing it. I mean, it's almost become a more popular female costume. So it's become very, very interesting.
That's kind of a racy version of Donald Trump right there. I've seen the kid ones. I actually saw a little fella practicing his line for Halloween yesterday, saying it's going to be huge.
Exactly.
Does it bug you when the media is so hard on your father? I mean, do you take that personally at the end of the week, after a hard week, and you say, you know what, you don't know my dad?
Yeah. When they're unfair, yes. When they're not, no. Right? I mean, obviously, you have to be thick-skinned. We've always had thick skin. He's always been, in the media. Believe me, he's certainly used to it. But the media is very cruel. The political process is incredibly cruel. And certainly, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's something that weighs on children, probably actually more than it even weighs on him, right? I mean,
sure.
You kind of almost feel like you want to protect him or you want to do something. But, the media can be very, very cruel, and this is a very tough, grueling process. But the best candidate will ultimately win. And, if you can get through the presidential process, you've done something incredibly amazing. You are tough and you do have thick skin. And by the way, that's true of any candidate.
Without a doubt. Eric Trump, we thank you for your time today. I'll tell Ivanka to come on by.
I absolutely will.
Love to hear her take on your dad as well. Be well. Now this, what happens when parents are in charge of school curriculum? Good morning to you. It is Friday, October 16th, 2015. Presidential candidates Donald Trump and Ben Carson teaming up to boycott the next Republican debate. But now the only female in the GOP race is saying it's time to man up.
I think apparently they're worried about answering questions for 3 hours. And I think we ought to stand and answer as many questions as we can.
So are CNBC's debate rules really unfair? Donald Trump's son, Eric Trump, is here with us live.
And a TV doctor swept out to see what happened to this young woman in Hawaii. The stunning, tragic story straight ahead.
And Rudy to the rescue. The man who cleaned up New York City just became a hero.
Completely trending right now for Halloween, and perhaps Hulkbuster over there is trying to give him some challenge.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk a little debate in politics and actually involve Eric's father. Donald Trump and Ben Carson have teamed up because CNBC, which hosted the next debate at the Cooler Center out in Boulder on October 28th, they sent out a memo to the candidates. Hey, you agreed to these guidelines. It's going to be 3 hours long now, and there are going to be no opening or closing statements. And Donald Trump and Ben Carson, who are at the top of the poll, said, hey, wait a minute. Those are not the guidelines we agreed to. We might sit out unless you change them. Here's Donald T.
They want to make this an extra hour. And I think it's unfair to the viewers because it's too much to watch, and they're doing it because they want to make more money. It was agreed to 2 hours, and now all of a sudden, yesterday, they came up with this additional long period of time, whatever it may be. But it was originally agreed that it was going to be a 2 hour. I mean, the networks, they're making a fortune off of this stuff. They never made money. They always lost money with it. Now they're making a fortune. I wonder why.
Yeah. Well, I asked our brain room, I said, how are the primary debates traditionally done? None are over 2 hours over the last 8 years. So this is going on an extra mile. And you did see the fact that it was a joke on every late night show, how after 3 hours under the hot lights with a series of very difficult questions, 2.5 hours in as opposed just as hard as the 15 minutes in, you see the guys like leaning over.
Sure.
Right. And then all they were is nonstop arguing.
But it makes sense. It makes perfect sense for it to be 3 hours because NBC is now owned by Comcast, the big cable provider, right? They always give you a 3 hour window. All right, we'll be there between 9 and 10.
You're funny.
We'll be there between 2 and 3.
It does make sense for advertising and selling it.
It's too long.
If they can sell that extra hour of advertising, and that's what Donald Trump is being, sort of nudged about right now. He doesn't like that. And he's saying, hey, these were not the terms. This is a man who looks at contract after contract. If these are not the starting terms, which I agree to, there's no way he's going to agree to it now.
But for people like Carly Fiorina who excel in this forum, she would like it probably 4 hours.
True.
Listen.
I think apparently they're worried about answering questions for 3 hours. For heaven's sakes, we have 10 candidates on the stage. I don't think 3 hours is a long time. And I think the American people actually like these debates. Maybe the establishment wants fewer debates, but I think the American people really like them. And honestly, here are two outsiders, supposedly, Donald Trump and Ben Carson. They sound a lot like politicians tonight to me.
So what's going to happen? Well, according to Charles Gasparino over at Fox Business, people inside CNBC say the net will cave to Trump because they would prefer 2 hours with Donald Trump than 3 hours without Donald Trump. So once again, Donald Trump, who's said he's a good negotiator, he negotiated, and it sounds like he got what he wanted.
Sounds as if it did. We asked you what you thought about this. Todd tweeted us this. Terrific. This isn't the only debate before elections. 2 hours is plenty. There'll be more debates. Have pity on the viewers.
Yeah, it's amazing, too, how NBC is made up with Donald Trump. Bernadette emailed us and says, with the number of candidates we have in the Republican Party, we definitely need a 3-hour debate. In my opinion, the more questions we can hear answers to, the better.
Good point.
And Teresa tweeted, completely agree with Donald Trump and Dr. Ben Carson. At this point, all candidates below 5% need to get off the stage.
I'm just wondering what the other stage is going to look like now. Because since that time, Walker's gone. You know, you have to wonder about how many, there's going to be maybe 3 people on that second stage.
And speaking of debates, we just wrapped up this week the Democrat debate. There is a story out that broke in the last hour that it sounds like Joe Biden, who's putting together a platform, is going to announce within 3 days. And his family is in. And if he's got a platform, that means it's a yes.
I think it's a yes, too.